Politics and Perspective with Chris Johnson. Palpable.
Yeah.
You are there. All right.
Buddy, how are you?
I never had it so good. How are you?
Strangely the same.
Yeah.
You know, wow, the world is crazy, but not everything is. Not everything.
No, it's true. And it always has been. So there's nothing new there.
Correct.
Anybody who thinks it should be any different is probably got a lot more wrong with their, view of it.
Yeah, man. How far along are you in this teacher training? I'm curious on how this is affecting you right now.
Many lifetimes, but at the moment I'm about halfway through. So it's like a 8-week thing. I'm about 4 weeks in, and it's super powerful. It's the right time. I don't regret not doing it. I think there's a lot to be said about the guru thing. Like a guru is going to come to you, and somebody introduced me to somebody through an interview, and I from there just kind of was keen to the scent of my instructor, and the opportunity came up. Being online, he's in Hawaii right now, so I wouldn't have had the opportunity to do it. But that's kind of one of the benefits of the situation where everybody has to shift to online, and it works. I'm sure there's things I'm missing that, just the Sangha, the energy of the community is a little diluted, but the information and the focus is there. There's hardly any crosstalk. So it's just kind of like,
That's cool. I like that term you used, keen to the scent.
Yeah.
Keen to the scent of your teacher, of your guru that was coming through the energy. Like a few times, I've had a handful of teachers, and I'm thankful for every one of them. And each time there was that scent in the air,
right,
so to speak. It's interesting.
Yeah. As I've been practicing a long time, and it kind of started just as like, I just kind of want to deepen my practice right now. I've just been getting more and more into it. Again, with the pandemic, I've been able to it was hard at first, but now I've been able to like really get into a rhythm and kind of like root down. I kind of had, I don't know, I guess over the last year, there was kind of a bit of a dark night of the soul. And recently it's just kind of been on a more upward trajectory. And this kind of seemed like the thing to do,
It's so beautiful. What style or what's the teacher's name?
His name is Yogi Charu. It's like a very, I'm going to say classical, like very traditional, by the book. Like he's like, at 16, he went to the Himalayas and like learned it from the source, so to speak. He's coming at it from like just a very ancient wisdom point of view. It's and not poo-pooing anything. He's just like,
Sure.
that's just not what I do. His downward dog is Parvatasana, which is mountain pose, which is like, oh, that's not what we call it. He's like, yeah, but there it's shaped like a mountain. I'm like, okay. So, and he's just kind of real like loose. I'll send you some links to him. He does, I'll send you the interview that I heard. He was basically telling this story about, or somebody was asking him like, what's like some of the wildest, yogic, sadhu city type thing that you've witnessed. He's like, okay, well, I was up in the Himalayas with my teacher, my guru, and the sadhu comes out of the woods, and everybody there, they bathe in the Ganga. And he's like, it's cold. It's, it's fast. You don't just jump into the Ganga for like fun necessarily. And, he's like, I'm out there, I'm kind of getting in, I'm freezing. I have to stay close to the riverbank so I don't get washed away. And this guy just comes out of the woods does his puja, does his asana, sticks out his tongue, which was split at the tip. So he walks out to the middle of the Ganges with like no hesitation, sticks his tongue out, the tip of his tongue is split. He closes his nostrils with it, and then he just goes under the water for 2 weeks. And I'm just like,
What?
whoa, what? And I mean, just thinking on a material level, it's like, I mean, your flesh would just melt off, beyond all the other problems that, arise with this situation. You must have some pretty mystical power to be able to achieve this. And not only that, but then he was saying that his guru was communicating with him telepathically. It was just like, okay, I don't know shit about shit. And, I've had some, I'll briefly, I've probably said this story before in different places, but during an ayahuasca experience that I had probably 6 years ago now, I witnessed, the whole thing with that is like a lot of purging and like puking and just getting these toxins and these, traumas out of you, whatever way possible, essentially. And at one point during one of these ceremonies, one of the attendees just lost it essentially and couldn't get it back together, couldn't purge, was just kind of out there. The shaman and his like team was kind of like, okay, like code yellow, let's go over and sing some macaros. Let's, deliver the medicine to this guy. That's not working. Little bit, and I'm like deep in my own thing, but this is only like 15 feet away. And I'm, but like I said, I'm spun out, but not like I don't get what's happening. And then it kind of picks up, the alarms start going off. And then it's like, okay, code red. This guy is essentially, fighting with some like demon or something, some kind of possession. And it got to the point where the shaman took some kind of tool, like it almost looked like a bong, like a glass tube. And he like stuck it into the top of this dude's head. And for the next 20 minutes was just sucking vomit out of him and puking for him.
Whoa.
And I was just like, again, that was another one of those like, wow, that's not what I came here for. I don't know. I don't know shit about shit. My attachment to the material world is so, shallow. And there's just a lot more that I don't understand. And that was probably really one of the bigger like tip-offs to, it's time to go deeper. It's time to kind of stop fucking around. I'm not going to be here forever. And I should take this a little bit more seriously. This is a really unique experience.
Wow, man. That both those stories are so incredible and, hard to square, right? In your rational mind. But that's part of what kind of the spiritual, or I guess, path kind of asks of you, is that it's going to challenge you. You don't come in to a practice, or especially a long-term, deep body of knowledge and not get asked to stretch your mind and stretch what you thought was real,
right,
on some level, right?
And I think it's also getting to a point where you realize that there's going to be a gap. It's your gyan, your knowledge, the books, they're not going to take you all the way there. Your guru is not going to take you all the way there. Your experience is not going to take you all the way there. There's always going to be this edge. And at some point you just have to leap. You have to, like, you're never going to understand it because you're not engineered to understand. And even just having the faith in that like, yeah, you know what? Sooner or later, I just kind of have to put my money on a horse. And, and it kind of doesn't matter what horse on some level, now we're getting into like more of like a spiritual trajectory, but, if you're French, you would call the sun Soleil, and if you were Spanish, you would call it Sol. If you were Indian, you would call it Surya. We call it the sun. It's the same fucking globe. It's the same thing.
Right.
So it's just kind of a matter of what language or what avatar or whatever do you want to accept, what will kind of hit you where it needs to hit. But it's all kind of the same thing. We're all talking about the same thing.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. I think when you look, especially just looking at ancient civilization on a wide screen, and you see how so many things crossed seemingly separate cultures and civilizations all came out very similar, and right. We have just different names for the same experiences or similar experiences. So
yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Do we want to go deeper there? Where do you want to go?
Oh man, I'm open to just catching up with you and hearing about it, because it's interesting to me, because we've shared this little thread for years as we meet up at shows and festivals and stuff, and be like, oh, I see you're doing yoga. Yeah, I'm doing yoga. I'm doing the thing, and and I get to watch you, shred on the bass and do the thing for all those years in Dillinger, and to just to we have a parallel in that we're music loving yogis, and
well, what's your journey? Where did that start? I don't know all of your yoga story, and I just kind of was again kind of witnessing it through the the social media. I'm trying to think of like a funnier way of saying it, but just watching it that way and watching it evolve, I was like, whoa, okay. Yeah. I'm always like cheerleading anybody getting into it. And I also think it's kind of like, not saying we're coming from exactly the same place, but there's a little bit of that, like, you know what? I don't fucking care. This is who I am. This is what I do, and really kind of like going for it. So, I've been kind of cheerleading for that and curious to talk to you about it. So
yeah, man, same. I mean, I'm definitely a cheerleader for anyone getting into it from any aspect. And it's like, for me, it started 20 plus years ago when a good friend locally, I'm back up in Chico, California, kind of my area where I came from. I moved back out of LA.
Chico.
Oh, it's a great little town. And but my friend Corinne, actually my weed dealer at the time, actually, he was my good buddy from high school. And Josh, he was like, hey man, my girl wants to do this yoga thing, and there's like supposed to be a partner or something. I don't want to go, but like, I trust you, man. Would you go with my girl and go do this thing? And I'm like, yeah, man. I mean, I've heard about yoga, chakras and stuff. I mean, there's color involved. I think I can get down with that. Yeah. And as long as it's okay if I smoke weed before I go, whatever.
Stoga.
Yeah, it's like Stoga, bro. And I was hooked almost immediately. Like I felt, I've always been kind of in touch with ethereal, like more subtle qualities of myself on some level, even though there was always sub layers, to get to, but I was pretty hooked. It was just a hatha, real simple hatha practice, a little bit of alternate nostril breathing, a little bit of this.
That's kind of where I'm coming from with this. The training I'm doing is straight out of the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, and lots of pranayams, lots of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's where it started. And that woman gave us a tape or a CD. I think I got a tape initially and then ended up getting a CD later, but because it's like late 90s. And I just kept, that's what I thought yoga was, man. I didn't think it was anything else. I had a CD I kept with me for 15 years. I did 2 or 3 times a month. Anytime I felt stressed, I just like, oh, I'll put that 45-minute rest and relaxation yoga thing on. Yeah. I know yoga. And every once in a while I'll be like, hey, you want to come do this yoga thing with me? I'm like, get my friends to come in, like, sure, oh, man, I feel better. That was good, and and that's just where I left it. And but then towards the end of my marriage up in Seattle, she was like, my ex was like, hey, there's this hot yoga place, Bikram yoga. And I'm like, oh.
That's what really gave me the like.
I was like, I went in and I remember the first session. I was like, I hate this. I hate this. I hate this. This is horrible. Why would anybody do this? This is horrible. My mind chatter was so heavy. It was such resistance. And then I got up after 90 minutes and walked out and took my first breath of fresh air. And I was like, oh, this is why you do it.
Right. Chitta vritti nirodha. You stop the mind chatter.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, because everybody, I don't want to say in the West, but we all think of yoga, or we kind of come to yoga through asana. You know, we come to yoga through poses. We think yoga is exercise. We think yoga is, you know, a six pack and a handstand. You
Mm-hmm.
know, but if you're you know, you come off the mat and you're still, you know, road raging prick, then you're not doing yoga.
No, it
It's,
didn't
you know,
work.
an asana is just like one, you know, arguably one limb of this eightfold system. Or I mean, it could be many-fold, it could be fourfold, it could be 32-fold, but traditionally about, you know, eight limbs of this tree, with asana just being like one, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe not even the most important one at all.
Totally. And that's what's
Not the
been,
most important one, actually.
yeah, not
Not,
the most
yeah,
important. It's an enjoyable, it's a good, enjoyable thing that happens to be a part of self-care for the physical shell. And I'm thankful for it. You
yeah,
know, I lean heavily on it on a weekly basis, both for my personal practice and for teaching.
yeah,
But as my practice and my whole study of it has evolved. I mean, I knew that up front, right? But
right.
and I was much like you in that I was like, okay, well, my life is a bit stressful. I don't really have, for myself, I didn't have like something that was really pulling me back to center and putting my feet on the ground as much as I would like. Otherwise, you know, going on hikes, going on bike rides and stuff like
Sure.
this, you know. Um, and then somebody's like, yo, you should come to this yoga class over here. I was in the Bay Area at that point, and I was like, oh yeah. So yoga is like, and I just started realizing yoga was so vast,
Right.
and that it was kind of open source. I mean, it was best practices from all these different groups, but there was really like, you could just, I mean, it's such a personal thing. You're not, there's no real competition here, right? It's not like the sport mindset where it's
No.
got to be this way. Um,
You're
although,
competing against yourself in a way. If you're competing against anything,
right. You're like,
you know,
can I do a little more or
right.
less, you know?
Which
I
that's a big thing too.
think that might be, that's what
Yeah.
kind of like a lot of where I get with my my students. A lot of times I'm like, look, this whole practice, as fun and as exciting, as strengthening and as lengthening and clearing as it may be, my goal for you is to learn how to not do anything for a little bits of time. I want you to learn
Yeah.
how to be still, be quiet, and notice, be aware, be awake, but without doing. Like, can we find that place? Because if you can find that place, then you're beginning to know more about your true essence, right? Like, and it's not something that I can put into words for you and go, here, man, this is the thing that you need to come back on Thursday and have it figured
Right.
out. You know, it's not that
Yeah.
thing. You just got to come and you got to lightly touch it over and over and over again until it becomes more and
Right.
more prevalent.
Right. It's like, you know, brushing your teeth every day. It's like you don't really notice it, but if you don't do it for a month and your teeth are fuzzy, then all of a sudden you're
Whew.
like, oh, okay. Um,
Little sweaters for your teeth.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, for me, it was a similar thing. I can remember, you know, my first yoga class was, you know, we were on tour and it was a Thanksgiving break and I was staying at we had a couple days off and I stayed with a friend in LA who brought me to a class and I was like, oh, okay, you know, falling out of everything and just kind of like wanting to do it, you know, and my whole life, things like meditation and yoga were always like kind of buzzwords that I knew I would get into, but I didn't know
Mm,
when or how. And then that slowly evolved. And then I had a friend who was a Bikram teacher who kind of invited me like, you know what, come for a week or two for free. You know, I'm not going to put you on the, you know, I don't have to check you in. Just come in, see if you like it,
mm,
and we'll talk. And immediately I was like, this is what I need because, you know, where it hit me was, um, I need to learn, you know, I was kind of like a mouth breather and on
same.
stage with Dillinger and everything, I'm like, I'm hot, you know, I'm sweating, I'm trying to concentrate, my body is fighting, everything is fighting me right now.
Mm,
And I, you know, but I'd walk off that stage and just feel like, because we would sweat like crazy. And like, it was kind of a similar thing where I would just go into that class, sweat like a pig, you know, and be concentrating. And I wasn't thinking about anything and everything that was going on outside of that moment didn't matter. And
mm,
I couldn't do that for myself until I stepped in. You know, I couldn't like that mocha, I guess they call it. I couldn't have that like silence for 90 minutes. And and just the idea of like, I'm going because I don't do this because I'm flexible. I do it because I'm not.
Mm.
And I don't do it because I want to be flexible in my body. I want to do it because I want to be flexible in my mind and like, adapt to these difficult situations and kind of just have that, not to kind of neuter my emotions, but just to kind of have a little bit more like even temper, whether it's good or bad, it's all going to change anyway.
Mm.
Life is good right now. Cool. Give it a minute. Life's
Mm-hmm.
bad right now. Give it a minute. It's,
Mm.
and realizing that it's like, oh man, this changes everything. This changes how I look at everything. All my failures are just like, that didn't happen to me. That happened for me. I might lick my wounds a little bit and like take it to heart. But at the end of the day, it's like, I'm just so thankful for any chance I've had to be humbled. And
Ooh.
yeah.
Yeah, being able to value the challenges, right? Being able to, and that's, I think,
And breathe through it, just to breathe through
right,
it.
right. And I think, yeah, and I think you really laid it out there in that, that it's, a byproduct is flexibility and strength for the physical self, but more importantly, it's the mind and the spirit that become more flexible and more. I actually think it's more of a uncovering versus a, like, it's almost like, it feels more of a, they would say, I mean, I've been studying a lot more of Chogyam Trungpa like lately, and he describes it as a subtractive process, right? Like, it's that basic kindness and universal goodness is there, and your unity with the universe and the world has always been there. It's never not been there. You have to uncover, you have to clear
Right.
away so that you
It's
can be in tune with it.
the way Michelangelo talks about carving David. He says, I
Mm.
freed David from the stone.
Ah, love that.
Like I saw David in there and I just freed him. It's
So
like,
you you
that's it.
you saw Liam in there, and you're freeing him.
Slowly.
Yeah, same.
Maybe
Yeah,
over a couple lifetimes,
yeah,
and
same.
this body's named Liam. It's so weird, man. I mean, I'm thinking even about, he was I'll call him my guru, was even talking about how, like, we choose our parents,
Mm.
and I think my daughter chose us for sure. But he was even saying that, like, we sit around and we're like, well, if it's a boy, I'll name it this. And if it's a girl, I name it this. And we have our lists and everything. But that Jiva, that soul, comes to us with a name. She actually told us what her name was.
Mm.
Just like all these kind of layers of this philosophy. It's such a beautiful philosophy too. Specifically, I'm coming from like a more bhakti tradition,
Mm-hmm.
and just how beautiful it all is. And just the way of seeing everything, like all the hardships, like all these stories, like the Mahabharata and all these, the Bhagavat Purana. It's like, well, this person gets cursed and dies here, and then 4 chapters later they reappear as this person, and you're
Mm.
just like, wow, that's bonkers, and it's kind of hard sometimes to suspend the disbelief, but at the same time, I think of all the things that I've already, like, okay, 250 million years ago, right there, you're like, wait, what? That
It's
already
already
is
too far.
stretching, and then you're like, there were these giant lizards and they roamed the earth and they ate tree. You're just like, what are you talking about? And
Yeah.
so I start to think that, like, I'm willing to accept something like that. Why won't I at least, because I don't know. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. I don't know any of this stuff, and I used to think that, on some level, it was like, especially coming from like the metal community, it's like, everybody wants to throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's like, you might hate Catholicism, and as a result, you just toss God out too.
Right.
And it's like, I don't know, that's kind of dangerous. I don't know if I agree with that anymore.
Agreed.
And because I think it kind of makes you close-minded, because then it closes, it just kind of, it justifies you being narrow-minded about everything, and that
Mm-hmm.
just kind of gets into that like mental flexibility of just like, what am I risking by believing it, or what am I risking by not believing it? And what am I preventing myself, even just the practice of just being more open-minded,
Mm.
even if I'm wrong, it doesn't matter. It's just like, I'm just trying to, think bigger.
When you shut it all out, though, and you say no to God, and you get like because of one experience or one sect or whatever, you're in a lot of ways doing the same thing that evangelicals will do, and they say, no,
Sure.
I have all the answers, and I'm
Right.
got my mind made up, and you can introduce all the new information you want, but I'm steadfast in my belief. And
Right.
so, a lot of atheism is just the other side of that. It's the same coin. And it's just like, no,
Right.
no, no, I'm steadfast. I know that the only thing that exists are the things that I can prove, blah, blah, blah. Okay, okay. Probably
Sure.
not. I think, that you can go that route all you want. But I think that what you're kind of touching on in a way here is that, and at least for me, I love story and I love allegory. I
Yes.
love
Yes.
the archetype thing, and because we have a hard time, our minds, like disseminating what is real from dream to day anyway. And there's just so much to be considered. And if it falls in your path, it is the path. So if there's a story that shows up, somebody that could be very volatile, somebody that you don't agree with, and all these things, but they're offering some sort of circumstances or story that seems unreal or fantastical. Well, it's a part of your path now, whether
Right.
whether you like it or not. You're
Right.
in, you could try and resist and try to get out of it, but that's not really that. As you and I know, that the way is through. Like
Right.
it's
Yeah.
not around. You can't get
Yeah. The
around
only
it.
way around it is through it. If you see the Buddha in your path, slay the Buddha.
Slay him, kill him. Yeah.
Um, yeah. Yeah. This is where my head is at lately. And, yeah. And just kind of trying to get through, challenge as we get older too. It's like, I feel like when I was younger, it was, something like, oh, this kind of, playground love. This girl, unrequited playground love was like the biggest thing on my mind.
Mm.
And then, as I think you just mentioned, like, but as you get older, it's like it's divorce, or like, oh, I didn't break my arm on my skateboard. It's like cancer.
Mm.
It's, as we get older, the stakes get higher.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, atheism kind of exploits that air gap that I was talking about, where like sooner or later, you kind of just have to realize that you just don't have the engineering, you don't have the hardware or the software. Maybe you have the software,
Mm.
maybe that's where, um, wisdom texts and certain religious communities might come in. But at the end of the day, like that's kind of where atheism seems to just dig its heels in. And it's a great trench to be in if you're an atheist, but
Sure.
I just don't really want to be right about that.
I don't either.
And it doesn't mean that and at the end of the day, there's atheists out there who are as kind and as giving and as service oriented as anybody else. And I think that at the end of the day, that's still exponentially above
Mm.
somebody who believes in God and is,
Dude, there was this thing that was passed around a while back. I can't remember who sent it to me, but I'm going to paraphrase the fuck out of it, but it was basically a student asking like a priest or a preacher about atheists, and it was like, how do we reach atheism, and how do we like bring them in or something like that? And the preacher said, well, look, um, atheists actually serve a very interesting point in the grand scheme of everything. If you take a look at, especially when you find an atheist that does good deeds, that has a sense of kindness and generosity and everything, that they're not doing it because a God dictates them to do it. Okay, they're not doing it out
right,
of this place. So you as a Christian or whatever, that's where you want actually to be doing things from. And so be like the atheist in your
right,
Christianity and serve selflessly. And I thought, oh man, that is so beautiful.
right. Or the idea that I don't want to do something so that I see God. I want to do something so that God sees me.
mm.
I really wish I had a different word for God because I don't even necessarily like all the loaded connotation with it. But
Well,
um,
source is a good one,
yeah, source is a good one. Yeah.
universe.
Um, but even that's tough, and maybe this is just my own kind of almost Hindu point of view, but like, so I think a lot of people like like Advaita, I think is, maybe I'm wrong on the name
Advaita,
of this. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. But like,
non-dual.
yeah, that like Brahman is everything,
Yeah.
that it's all energy, that it's universe. But then, I like the more bhakti tradition where it's actually like, no, there is like a supreme above the universe, that there's something that created Brahman too.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I don't know how it's going to work with the video, but and I of course didn't plan this, but I read something recently that I almost want to repeat to you if I can just quickly
Sure.
go through my phone and find this thing. Hold on.
Yeah, it pops up a real handsome photo of you, so we're all good over here.
Okay, let me find this thing. All right. Okay. So, in a mother's womb were two babies. One asked the other, "Do you believe in life after delivery?" The other replied, "Why, of course, there has to be something after delivery. Maybe we are here to prepare ourselves for what we will be later." "Nonsense," said the first. "There is no life after delivery. What kind of life would that be?" The second said, "I don't know, but there will be more light than here. Maybe we will walk on our legs and eat from our mouths. Maybe we will have other senses that we can't understand now." The first replied, "That is absurd. Walking is impossible, and eating with our mouths ridiculous. The umbilical cord supplies nutrition and everything we need. But the umbilical cord is so short. Life after delivery is to be logically excluded." The second insisted, "Well, I think there is something, and maybe it's different than it is here. Maybe we won't need this physical cord anymore." The first replied, "Nonsense. And moreover, if there is life, then why has nobody ever come back from there? Delivery is the end of life. And in the after delivery, there is nothing but darkness and silence and oblivion. It takes us nowhere." "Well, I don't know," said the second, "but certainly we will meet Mother and she will take care of us." The first replied, "Mother? You actually believe in Mother? That's laughable. If Mother exists, then where is she now?" The second said, "She is all around us. We are surrounded by her. We are of her. It is in her that we live. Without her, this world would not exist and could not exist." Said the first, "Well, I don't see her, so it is only logical that she doesn't exist." To which the second replied, "Sometimes when you're in silence and you focus and listen, you can perceive her presence and you can hear her loving voice calling down from above."
Mm, that is amazing. Who wrote that? Or do you know somebody send that to you, or what's that?
Somebody sent it to me. I have no idea where it came from. Yeah, I mean that comes from whoever wrote it down didn't write that, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that was a transmission.
Yeah.
That's
So
so beautiful on all the levels, and which is because what we're faced with here in this finite form, right, is especially in a modern age where we can tell that energy isn't created nor destroyed, right? Like that,
right.
and so we're like, oh,
That's karma.
Yeah,
it's Newton's law or it's karma, however you want to define it.
and there's so that defines or outlines an infinite essence of all things. All things have some aspect of infinite essence because we see the cycles of time and the grand
And a give and
cycles.
take. Everything has an action, has a reaction.
Yeah, and so on one level, and I'm one of the first people to be like, yeah, man, let's talk about stars and aliens and the conspiracy theories and all that stuff, because it's fun, it's interesting. I like story, I like allegory, but part of my practice has been, and a part of Buddhist and Hindu practice and meditation, everything is finding the world as it is, and learning to be like merging with what is, as opposed to what we were interested in it being, right? Like, oh, I wanted it to be this way, and that's where our suffering begins, right? And so, and I love that. It's like, well, people say, well, what's going to happen after you die? And I, this is one of my great questions. I love that question. I love that ponderance. At the same time, does it, ultimately, does it really matter to me in this moment? Is it constructive? Is it helpful for me getting the dishes done and the trash out and, you know, loving my neighbor? Is me pondering or being obsessed by it, let's say, to an extreme, is it helping my community? Is it helping my Sangha? Is it, you know, maybe.
Yeah. Well,
but
it's tough, you know, the whole, let me think how to explain it or how to relate to that. Well, I mean, I think that we do a pretty good job of avoiding the question of death. And, you know, and really rarely confronting it at all. And and in some ways it makes it easier to get away with being a turd if you don't feel like karma is a thing, you know, or you're just like, well, I can just be a turd and it doesn't matter because I'm going to die and you're going to, you know, love me or hate me. But if you believe that you come back and that you kind of get your just deserves in some way, then it changes the game a little bit. And it also allows me to kind of be like, if I don't get it this time, it doesn't mean I'm not going to keep trying, you know, because it's like, if I don't get enlightenment in this life, some people would just be like, well, then I'm not going to bother trying. And I'm like, no, I just kind of feel like I'm going to do as much as I can this time. And hopefully I'm going to come back in a body that is maybe designed better for that purpose. In a situation that maybe is designed better for that purpose. Have you seen on Netflix that Surviving Death show?
I think I saw one little chunk of it. I haven't gone into it.
I only watched episode 6. It was all about like reincarnation. You should watch it. This is not a story from that show, but my you know, this yoga instructor also talked about this, where he was saying in India there was a trial, like 2 men were on trial, one with, you know, or a man was on trial for murder, and you know, he went to jail. You know, the trial was taking a while, you know, 5 years or so before he, you know, all of this happens. In that time, a girl is born in a village 50 miles away who remembers everything about it. And to the point where she's like, take me back to this village. She knocks on her old house door. She sees her old wife, asks where this person and this person is, you know, and then goes on to describe the whole murder in detail, to the point where the judge is like, okay, you know, you're going to jail, you're convicted, this is, you know, beyond the pale. And it was so, I guess one other detail of it was the defending lawyer's pivot was, well, it looks like my client didn't murder anybody because they're right here.
Oh my God.
But, you know, it's like you only need to hear one of those stories for it to be true. So, you know? And we just forget the same way you forget, like, the time in your mother's womb. Like, I don't remember that.
Right.
So why would I remember my past life?
Super interesting that you bring that up too, because just this morning, Jessica Pimentel, I don't know if you're friends with her or not, but she posted.
We don't know well, but yes, I think we're friendly.
Yeah, she's great. She's a good friend, and she's super into Tibetan Buddhism, and we've talked a lot about all this stuff. And she just posted this morning this video, and I popped it on, and it's about this mother who had this little boy, and he kept, when he would play, he would always like use the name. His name was Luke. Like his parents gave him the name Luke, but he would play in his room, and everything that was a girl, he would name Pam. And so it was always Luke and Pam. And after a while, she was like, "Who's Pam?" And he was like, "Well, it's who I used to be," you know. And over a whole, you know, longer period of time, she sorted out. She kept asking questions, and one day, they saw that like the Oklahoma City bombing, like came on the TV, and he freaked out. He was like, no, turn this off. It reminds me of how I died. And she was like, what? And so she found out that I don't know how far away from Chicago they were, but that he remembers being a black woman named Pam that jumped from a fiery building that was in this big fire and died. And he remembers, like, he was able to pick out of a bunch of random photos of other black women and a picture of the woman Pam. He very quickly was like, I know exactly where that picture was taken.
Right.
So,
So,
whew.
yeah. So you should definitely watch that episode 6 of Surviving Death. So then, and just to kind of
Yeah,
tease with this idea, um, do you know Rupert Sheldrake?
I don't.
So he's got this. He's like a kind of like a Graham Hancock, in the sense
Oh,
of like a lot of people would say he's pseudoscience or something like that, but maybe he's just really fringe to the point where you know what I'm saying.
yep.
Um, so he's got this idea of morphic resonance or the morphogenic field, and the idea, the best way that I can try to explain it is, you might think that a spider like knows how to build a web from birth, like it's in its brain or something. But that's kind of like saying if I drop bricks off at a construction site, that the bricks would know how to build something. It's actually that this spider is tuning into the morphogenic field like a radio station. It's like this magnetic field, it's a radio wave, it's this, something in the ether that this spider is tapping into, and that we potentially are always tapping into. So essentially, maybe, and this is kind of just poking a hole in the eternal soul jiva atma thing, but maybe there is just kind of like, if a soul is just kind of like a pure drop of water with no memory, does it kind of fall through this field and like pick up something? So maybe it's not necessarily like that I had a past life, but just that past information is out there and you're just kind of getting dipped in it before you get here.
Yeah, yeah.
You know
And
what I mean?
maybe
That
so. Maybe
trauma is just like in the ether, and
yeah.
maybe it wasn't that he had a past life so much as this new soul dropped through that net, and some of it, some of those things stuck to it.
And when you're that young, they say that because they've had multiple studies of kids going through situations like this where they're remembering things. And yeah, I think that in that they say like up to like 6 years old, right? Like a lot of the
Right.
stuff can happen. And then there's a point where it just stops. Like they stop
Right.
remembering, quote unquote, or stop like being bothered by it. And so it's like almost like they're processing leftover trauma, either from somebody
Right.
else's life or from potentially their life, if that's the case. Yeah,
It's
wow.
yeah, being a parent and thinking about the because I see it, my daughter's just turned 6 and is kind of transitioning to 7, and like Rudolf Steiner, the Waldorf guy, the guy who like started his philosophy is also pretty fascinating. If you ever just kind of want to dive into, like, I've seen like Daniel Pinchbeck do talks on Rudolf Steiner, but like talking about like when kids lose their first teeth, and just like kind of like those like milestones similar to like a puberty or something, but just like when your brain shifts from like, I'm going to get this wrong, but like, beta to theta, or what, alpha to, I don't know what it is, but I know there is some sort of shift there. And yeah, it's interesting to think about that in terms of, when you trace it over the past life theories, and what's actually happening there.
Did you tune into Duncan Trussell's Midnight Gospel at all yet?
I'm like, how many? I'm like 6 out of 8 episodes through it.
Yeah. Have you got to the one with
I haven't
the jail?
seen the last. I think so.
Where it has, like, he goes to the cosmic prison, and there's a soul bird connected to the inmate, and he keeps dying, and he keeps feeling the death each time, and his heart comes out a little softer, a little kinder each time, and he kind of has this, doesn't remember it, but he has a strange memory of like, oh, not to do this bad thing, and then each time he gets a little lighter, a little lighter, a little lighter. Oh man. And the last episode, I mean, yeah, if you don't already know, it's about his mom, right? And
that's what everybody said. I've kind of been like, not putting the brakes on, but just like, I need to pay attention, because every time I watch it, I tend to watch TV at like 9. I'm kind of on this like get up at 5 a.m. and kind of be like really spun out by like 9:30. So usually when I'm watching stuff like that, I'm usually this guy, like,
totally.
and I need to go back and like really scrape into it more because I think it's fascinating. The animation, I think that's kind of part of it, is the animation is so overstimulating that I just like,
Right. It can lull you to sleep a little bit because there's so much going on, because the audio and the video definitely sync up, but there's one thing being said and another like 5 or 6 other things being shown, right?
right.
So it's, which makes good for multiple rewatching. And I mean, I've never not cried through that last episode, not even once.
That,
Like
that's what somebody keeps telling me. And I'm like, I'll get there. It actually like put the brakes on, I think is the best way to explain, because they were talking about like, without giving it away, without the spoiler, but like you said, it's like, it's about his mom. And I know a little bit of that story. And I'm just like, I don't know. I'm so sensitive. And, you
same.
know,
I made my mom watch it when she visited months ago, and you know, she's very much Christian and kind of very much on that side of things, and has wanted to keep herself safe in those beliefs, and just as my grandmother did. But her and my grandmother both, my grandmother maybe more so than my mom, has been before she passed, like she would listen to me about stuff, and I was like, oh, I found a book that was like Buddha and Jesus, like parallel sayings, you know. I was like, that's pretty
yeah,
interesting, right? I mean, like,
sure. Yeah. Yeah.
cool. And she's like, yeah, that is, you know, I'm not going to let your grandpa see that, but that's interesting, you know.
Right.
And she kind of, you know, hid it away.
Well, yeah. I
And
mean, almost every religion, there's, I think the profile is like, we are the ether, or we are ether. It's an Instagram profile. I'll send you a link to this thing.
okay.
But it's basically what you're saying. It's like, it kind of breaks down every religion's version of the do unto others as you would like them to do unto you. You
Mm,
know, I'm raised, you know, Roman Catholic, and so yeah, I mean that's where I'm coming from. You know, Catholic school, Catholic grade school through 8th grade. I went to a Jesuit high school.
wow.
I've definitely got a lot of like theology kind of forced on me, but at the same time, I've been like, you know, just I love it. You know,
Yeah, yeah. I do too. I'm one of the weirdest people in my circle in that
that's
when
the
people
second drug reference. I got to stop. Like,
it's okay, man. But like we're all addicts to something, right? And
sure,
like
yeah,
coffee is definitely one of my things. Weed is one of my things, and knowledge, you know, and like I hate that I love YouTube so much. There's so many fun, interesting things to deep dive on, and
yeah.
I'll be the, you know, people leave like as soon as the people are gone, I'll go and throw on Alan Watts, Chogyam Trungpa, or some sort of Graham Hancock or something, and I listen to that stuff and study it kind of in a loose way, but very endlessly. Like I'm very
Yeah.
much connected into it. I have piles of books for it, not because I've read them all the way through, but because I like having reference material around, and you know, it's one of the things that I kind of figured out late in life, that one of the reasons why retroactively I wasn't a great student in school was that I'm more of an energetic kinesthetic type learner, and I got to kind of like touch on it and like come in
Are you
contact with it.
are you a Vata dosh?
No, I'm a pitta. I'm a pitta
Okay.
pitta kapha, pitta oily kapha wet, actually,
Hmm.
if you know the subdosh in there, but
Yeah.
those gunas, but the yeah, and which is, but my vata is technically in balance, but
Yeah, I would say I'm kind of just scraping this myself, but I definitely think most of my dosha is, you know, I associate more with Vata, just in the I'm able to process things quickly, but I forget them, you know, or like I'm
mm,
kind of just I'm a little absent-minded and airy at times, you know,
sure.
like yeah, I'll do that. No, you can't do that. You have a wedding that day. Oh, okay. So, okay. You know, that kind of like should have known, but yeah. Um, I feel the same way about just like the knowledge, and like I feel like I can consume an incredible amount, especially if it's like an audiobook.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm like Mahabharata, 60 hours, no problem.
Oh
Bring
man,
it on.
I have that, but I've got through maybe 10 hours of it, and And because it's not as well, at least the version I have, maybe you have a better version, but mine's not as narrated as good as like the actual Bhagavad Gita. I've got a Eknath Eswarian translation. All his are read by Paul Baisley, and he's got like this amazing voice. So like he did the where he did the Bhagavad Gita and
Ramayana or
I'll tell you here in a sec. It's like he did three really important ones that are really great. My phone will let me take a look, but the I have.
Don't you have a producer to do this for you? Come on.
I know, right? No, man. The funny thing about this podcast is, I as much as I could put more energy into it, I like it. I like kind of not trying too hard with it, to be honest. You know, like like, I try so hard in so many other
more
things.
Genuine. I know.
I'm like, man, I just want to just hang out and talk to my friends and post it and be done. Oh, the Dhammapada. Which is incredible. And it's got a red cover, and it's one of the Eknath Eswarian translations with Paul Baisley. So Dhammapada and Bhagavad Gita, and there's like a third one that might be sutra based, not the Yoga Sutras, but I don't know if it's the Diamond Sutra. I'll have to go back, and it's like deeper in my thing. But what wonderful translations, and Paul just has such a great voice, and when he switches characters, it's really apparent, and he just does a really good job of the subtle things. And when I pulled up the Mahabharata, I was like, oh man, it's good, but like I'm so spoiled with these other.
No, I know. I think I can't remember who the translation is, but the main audible one. There's moments in there where I can hear the narrator's stomach growling. And I'm sitting there like, yeah, I am kind of, oh, that's not even me.
Like totally triggers you.
So there's like things about it that I'm like, yeah, I really have to kind of like, separate the signal from the noise. But I think the essence is great. And, having gone through like Game of Thrones and left a little disappointed. I was like, I just need I need an epic. I need the Epic of Gilgamesh, or like the Ramayana or the Mahabharata. I kind of just want to go back to the source of all of these. Because almost everything, the Mahabharata, at least for me, I was just like, I can't believe how intricate and detailed and like tricky and these plot lines. It's like, it's actually quite fascinating. And it makes me think that even if we are getting technologically more advanced, we're devolving in almost every other way, because this story, the richness of this, and to think that people would memorize this whole thing before it was ever, even the Gita and all this stuff, it's like this stuff was mouth to ear for 10,000 years before anybody ever wrote it down.
The Gita is so phenomenally beautiful to me. And I feel like if there's one book that I was going to go back to out of all the books, that would be the one, strangely enough.
Have you, hold on, since I have it right here, this Joshua Green translation?
No, I don't know that.
This, I feel like in terms of, of course, like Prabhupada's, translations and those purports are just so this, I feel like, is a little bit more something I would give to somebody who has zero interest in it. And just the way it's broken down, it's real simple. It's not thick. It's just like, but it gets to the heart of it in a way that, I think all those purports and all the translations all have their own little thing.
Sure.
But I find this to be like really digestible and like, kind of digs into some things that, and it kind of summarizes it. Sometimes it's not like every verse. It's like, here's 44 to 46. And it's just like, here's the paragraph. And you're like, oh, well, that's kind of the essence of that. The chapters are only like 4 or 5 pages long. I'm like, oh, sometimes that's all I need.
It's great. I'll have to check that out and snag it. I dated a girl a bit last year that said that she was into all this stuff and wanted to, I said, well, let's go. We're going for a drive. I'm going to put the Gita on, and like, it's a really good thing. And like, just if you're open to it, like, just be quiet and listen for a while. And Oh man, I think that's why we're not together. I was like,
Right.
I'm like, oh, she just like, yeah, I don't know. I'm like, okay, never mind, never
Well,
mind.
I think a lot about like, especially with the Hindu tradition. I think about like CERN and how they've got a
Mm,
giant dancing Shiva at that
mm.
facility, and I think about Oppenheimer quoting the Gita when they drop the bomb. Like, and I'm just like, man, this is some deep, deep stuff. It's not just any tale,
It's true.
and I think the first time I read it, I didn't get it. I didn't understand, the battle because, I think, for a lot of people, they don't understand that the Gita is actually like the 13th chapter of the Mahabharata. So
Right.
you need to understand why they're fighting, and to have this whole backstory about why these cousins are basically, they've tried everything. They've tried to be peaceful. They've tried to do everything they possibly can to avoid this situation. And then and now the armies are all lined up, and Arjun and Krishna are out there, and Arjun's like the baddest ass fighter ever. And as he's getting ready, he's having a meltdown too. And and then just that's the Gita, is this is like, you have a duty to fight, and it's not, you need not concern yourself with who dies. I know that you will have to kill your grandfather for you to succeed, but that's not your problem. Don't worry about it. Trust me, trust fate, and just do, just be the most ultimate badass you can be.
Right.
And at least for me, in my like dark nights of the soul, whether it's Dillinger or just some other kind of hiccups in my music career, I've kind of been like, what is, that always felt like my dharma. Is that what I need to be doing? Is this, and just, not to say that parenting and some of these other things aren't bigger things, but just kind of being true to myself and realizing like, yeah, man, sometimes you got to just get up and fight, and you got to just do what is not always easy, and sometimes the fact that it's easy is exactly why you shouldn't be doing it.
Mm,
Yeah, I don't know. That's
true.
that's a bigger overlay, but
Yeah,
yeah.
but I think it points towards the the idea of trying to see yourself squarely, like what is my function, and
Right.
and am I fulfilling that function? And like, he was a warrior, and that was fulfilling his function. And just as an animal, like, that's what part of what we learn from the animal world, right, is they don't second guess their function,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
They're just, nope, I'm here, I'm doing the thing, this is what I do, I kill things and eat them because I have to. That's my function.
Right.
And so in a way, it's kind of like leveling the playing field, shifting out of good and bad, and in that, like, kind of that in that field where Rumi says, oh, there's a field out past good and bad, and I'll meet you there, or something like that, and
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's kind of,
Rumi's. I have recently rediscovered Rumi too. Um, yeah. Uh, yeah. Rumi's, man. That's some whole other thing. Like Sufism too. Like,
mm-hmm,
I kind of came across this documentary or this film series, Qawwali. You know
mm,
about Qawwali?
mm-mm.
Kirtan? Like,
Yeah.
it seems like it's the Sufi version of Kirtan.
Okay.
Like, Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan,
Mm-hmm.
um, like that would be like a Qawwali master.
Oh, okay.
But there's this film series that I've been watching, just kind of just about like devotional music. And I'll openly say, like, I feel like I listen to a lot more of that kind of stuff than almost anything else lately, just as like a palate cleanser.
Sure.
I still listen to a lot of metal and just some other Rajasic music, but yeah, between like the lectures and everything else, sometimes I just need like that kind of palate cleanser. I've heard some other people talk about just like, oh, I just put on like the Christian station just because I just need like,
Mm.
I need a break, even if I don't care about what
Yeah.
they're saying or talking about.
Yeah, the palate cleanser is important, especially for music heads like ourselves that have been ingesting a lot of music over a lot of time. We probably
Right.
listened to 10 times the amount of music than the average person.
And also just like, I know for me, like, I remember watching MTV as a kid. I remember like first, some of the first, incarnations of it, so to speak. And, especially when I started getting into music and seeing something like the Paradise City video, and just being like, oh, okay, cool. I'll just like get really good at this thing. And like, that's my destiny.
Totally.
And there were certainly times where I felt like I touched that a little bit. But then you see something like this Kawali stuff or this Kirtan stuff, and you're just like, oh, there's this whole other layer where like, if you get out of your own way, because my dreams were very ego driven.
Same.
And when you see people perform in like this completely, surrendering, just total devotion, total love, total, like, that's it. There's nothing else. It's not for fame or anything else. It's literally just to kind of, to communicate with their beloved, and how much time I spend knocking on the open door, pounding on that open door like a fool, and just kind of just trying to reinterpret my relationship with music, because it's already provided me so much. And like, I can walk out of that casino happy. But at the same time, that's where I kind of get into my dharma, and I'm like, but I can't actually, it's Hotel California. I can't get out. But maybe I can change my, my attitude or my focus.
Yeah, the approach towards me. I love you describing that, because I too, and I had a metal band in Seattle for like 7 years, and we put out a couple of EPs, and the approach was a bit ego driven. I mean, you can't not be ego driven if you want to be on stage and you're playing heavy, aggressive music. It's
the ego is not a
fast
bad thing. It's not a
Correct.
bad thing to have an ego. It's just, you gotta just use it.
But you kind of have to overuse it for a while to find the edge of what is available, or where it breaks off for you. Like,
well, you don't want to get into, what is it, ahankara, the false ego. It's just kind of like, where are you right now? Are you in your ego or the false ego? And then also recognizing that ego isn't just I'm awesome. Ego is also you suck. And playing and reconciling that, push and pull. Anyway, continue. You were talking about but I don't want to derail you.
You're good. I'm following the thread of feeling like, I remember, being at band practice and, having powwows and talking about like, hey man, if we can put this album out and go on tour, then maybe we get picked up. And then, the whole plotting and planning of the sequence of events that you're hoping that's going to happen for this group and for this project. But all the while, like, as soon as it got so heavy, and then like there was so much stress involved with like the coolest thing that ever happened to us, I was like, wait, maybe we shouldn't do it for those reasons. Maybe we should do it because we just love to do it. And if something good happens, cool. But if we're just regular dudes that have to go back to work, that's okay too, because, I had that forethought. And then, years later, as things evolve, yoga practice evolve, blah, 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 all this stuff. It's like, I'm sitting here all the time playing with music in my studio. And what I love about my state now is that the simplest things make me so excited. Like, I do the smallest little thing. I'm like, nobody's going to think that's cool, but I think that's amazing.
No, I mean, I love watching you just kind of post a video, just like, I'm just jamming. You're just like, because it's just going to evaporate. It's just going to get buried in the feed. But in that moment, you were connected, and that's all that matters. And
good.
So many things were a fluke. Like Dillinger was like, I mean, objectively speaking, it was like, when I joined, I was like, this isn't going to last. Nobody's going to like, this is just going to be like a hoot. And I'm going to drop out of school. I'll go back to school when this is over. This kind of thing burns hot and fast. And I'm just doing it for the love. And, I knew there was maybe like break even money, but I knew I was always going to have a day job. And I kept my day job for most of that time. But, and then when it just kind of starts to take off, you're like, this is amazing. But then also the like, there's always a consequence. There's always some other thing. And like that, you know, it kind of ends up like the bigger it got is kind of like all that pressure is kind of ultimately what forced it to end too.
Right.
You know, so it's like, you know, be careful what you wish for.
100%. Yeah. I love that, you know, that for me, like I've come from fairly, you know, poor circumstances most of my younger years and everything. And it was always about like, I just want to have enough money to not worry about my groceries when I go in
Sure.
to the store and just get the things that I want. Right. Cause I just remember that being a scene in my childhood. No, I want these things. We're not, you know, those people, we can't afford all this stuff. Like we're going to get a couple things. You can get one of those things. And then it's all these years later. I'm like, I've had multiple times, just like lots of experiences of like, wow, man, I can just walk in here and just like I can buy the groceries that I want. I can get the shoes that I want. I don't have to.
I can be vegan and eat at Whole Foods.
That's
How
right.
privileged is that nonsense? I mean, I'm the card carrying, you know.
Yeah.
Just the acknowledgement of like, I sound like a fucking turd right now.
But you have to explore
and I'm doing
that.
it for the right thing. And again, it's like, and because my heart's in the right place, but like, doesn't mean that it's in alignment. And, you know, or that I don't have to reconcile with like what that means, or like how privileged it sounds that I can even say something like that.
That echoes the sentiment of, you know, like the road to hell or whatever is paved with good intentions. And like that Alan Watts lecture, one of his lectures, he talks about how, you know, the do-gooders of the world are the ones, you know, stirring up all this dust. They think they're doing all this good, but meanwhile, while they force their views on stuff, they're always creating these subsequent unintended fallouts. And so that, you know, the really enlightened folks, you know, so to speak, are the ones that are just leading by example, predominantly doing the thing, showing up and being in action, but not trying to fix or change anything, because
and they're not trying to be the enjoyer of they're not trying to enjoy the fruits of their labors, so to speak.
Well, that's a tough one. That's tough.
Yeah. And you know, especially when money gets involved, because it's important, you know, we all need some of that. And you know, I struggle with my association with it, and you know, but also trying to realize like it might not buy me happiness. I acknowledge that. And material stuff is not what's going to do it. You know, I'll quickly hold on. I got another monologue I'll say, but like just realizing that money does provide you freedom. And I do think that's important. So, you know, having an okay relationship with money, or at least with the energy that we call money, is really important. And then the monologue I have that I've said before in other podcasts is, you know, but this is something that really kind of, you know, shook me a little bit, is I see, you know, like you know, we were on tour with Soundgarden when everything happened with Chris Cornell. And I see what happens with like an Anthony Bourdain, you know, and I'm just like, from my point of view, I'm like, these guys have everything the material world could offer them at their doorstep, you know, like at arm's reach at all times, you know. And Bourdain, it's like, this guy, you know, got over addiction, beautiful partnership, great show, like living the life, all the friends, everybody wants to be Anthony Bourdain, you know. Like not only like I want just, yeah, I mean, everything about this guy, and yet it didn't fix it.
Right.
You know, all the material stuff in the world just did not fix it. And then I look at like a George Harrison, same situation. You know, that guy had everything the material world could offer him at his doorstep. He also wasn't satisfied. And he just turns around and says, my sweet Lord, Hare Krishna. And in some, you know, it doesn't have to be that, but I do think that that's really kind of, I'm smelling what he's stepping in. There's something there that, you know, I really just at least need to process in my own way.
He's definitely my favorite Beatle, for sure.
For sure.
I mean, those albums during that time too were just, I put them on. I have it on vinyl, and I can't not love it. Yeah.
And you know, his All Things Must Pass, I just think is such a flawless record.
Yeah, that's actually what I'm talking about. I've got like the three.
Okay, just make
two or three record set that comes with that. I found it in the dollar bin, actually, strangely enough, and it works great. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
that's how that album is supposed to come to me.
Well, I was going to say that's a blessing. That's,
Dude.
you know,
I was like, how is this? This is funny. This is
that's
like
great.
one of my favorite albums, the one I listen to probably more than I've got a nice little collection, but I put that one on a lot. It's comforting.
Yeah, that's a winner.
Yeah, man. Well, I think we should talk a little bit about music stuff. If
Really? No, sure. Yeah.
Just that, and that, like, this is it started off loosely as a pick podcast in the sense that
Right.
it's my.
I actually had to look up about halfway through and be like, oh, we are recording. This is the podcast.
Yeah, this is what we're doing, man.
Cool. All right.
Yeah, it's but I'm always interested in just knowing where your relationship with picks started. If you remember anything about your first few picks, did anybody influence you, and how did you get to play what you play currently?
Yeah. Okay. I've never actually got the opportunity to like dive into this detail. It's funny on Twitter. I've been really hanging out on Twitter a lot more than anywhere else. But somebody was asking about, like, did you start with a pick or your fingers, as a bass player? And I was like, typically when I talk about it, I'm like, oh, I'm like a finger player who started playing with a pick when I joined Dillinger. And I was like, no, actually, my first bass lesson, I walked in with one of those Fender, kind of pearloid or kind of tortoise shelly brown triangle picks. And, because I was into, like Alice in Chains, and I'm trying to think of like some of the other pick bass players I was in, like, Faith No More.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could rattle off dozens of, things I was into at the time, Jason Newsted.
Totally.
A Crash Course in Brain Surgery was the first thing I ever learned how to play, the Metallica Garage Days version. But I remember walking in with a pick, and my teacher was just kind of like, you don't need that. But not in like a cocky way. He was just like, almost just like, I don't know how to teach you with that. And I'm the bass teacher in this neighborhood, in the zip code. So we're going to do it my way. And not saying that I couldn't do it, but anyway, so I put the pick down, and then years of reading Bass Player and whatever, all the purists and everything. It's just like, playing with a pick was like verboten, you just don't do that. You're a guitar player. You're a guitar player who moved over to bass if you play with a pick. And I was like, no, I started on bass, and it's all I want to do. And I always wanted to, I was kind of into the flashy flea thing too. So I kind of knew I wanted, or like Rob Trujillo, that was always a thing too. So I was like, I wanted to slap too. So anyway, I just kind of abandoned the pick. And then when I started playing in my first band, so I guess I started playing bass at like 12. First bands were like 15, 16. And I remember my band at that time kind of asking me to play with a pick. I was like, nah, I don't do that. And then kind of asking me to do it, kind of really kind of like making it more of an ultimatum. So I tried to learn how to play our stuff with a pick, and played like one or two shows with it, but was just like, this is hard and sounds terrible. Not to say the tone wasn't good, but my tone wasn't good.
Sure.
So, then Dylan, I get wrapped up into the Dillinger thing. Those, I met them, and there was like kind of a year sort of purgatory for various reasons before I actually officially joined. And in that time, it was hard enough just to get my left hand to, my ear to wrap my head around what was happening, and they were like, okay, and you got to play with a pick, because that was like a lot of the reason why they were, looking to change bass players again. So, I started getting into it, started trying to figure out how to make that work. And and then it was just, just trial and error, a lot of it. And, I specifically will always shout out Steve Evitz, our producer, who would just really crack the whip, but really was like kind of the only person who truly sat down and like tried to help me adjust, and in a studio setting, it was really, unique, or kind of, I guess perfect is a better thing, because I could really hear, like when we're recording this machine and, recording this other stuff, it was like, I could hear the difference between if I hit it the right way. If I moved it just over the pickup and kind of angled it this way and really used my elbow and not simply my wrist and, not this, but, and then it just then my interest in it and my fascination with it blossomed, and I started seeing everything kind of like Bruce Lee. I started thinking about playing with a pick where it's like, it actually starts like 6 feet below my feet. It comes up through my toes, through my legs, all the way, and then whack.
Wow.
And, I started really, and again, I'm still a rookie. I still have, a lot of work to do on my technique and my timing and but I feel like I figured out how to make it crack. And then it started getting into dudes like Bobby Vega.
Love Bobby.
And just seeing how funky you could be all of a sudden, because I was always into like Jocko, and that was always just such a hard reconciliation of like, I feel like I'm more lyrical. I feel like I'm speaking better. I'm more authentic without a pick. Like most of my performance in the world has been with a pick. And I don't think that that's my strong suit in a sense. At least in terms of me really expressing something. Maybe I'm narrow. Maybe I'm not seeing this as clearly. And I'm not trying to like belittle what I've achieved there too, but I still write, my parts without a pick, or when I was like figuring out Dillinger stuff, figuring out my Dillinger lines, I'm doing it like this. And then when I need just to get like the melody or the something, to figure out what notes I needed and where it's going to go. And then when I needed to like rehearse it up, it would always be with the pick. But I typically don't default to the pick even still. So I don't know. And now, and I'm still just the student of the pick. I still love it. Guys like Cody Wright, and I was saying Bobby Vega, these just dudes are just doing such cool stuff with the pick. I think everything like, and Tosin, all the alternate picking stuff and just the way that he's kind of taken some of that, Victor Wooten, Evan Brewer kind of techniques and really just smashed it on the guitar. But, he's got I really think that he's kind of onto some interesting stuff with, just the way that the pick and your other fingers and this hand and the hammer, just the whole combination of things. It's just, you kind of think that you've hit, sort of hit the windshield, and it's just like, oh, no, we're going through the windshield.
There's yet another way.
Yeah.
And what picks are you playing these days? Have you been on the triangles for a long time, or?
I went. We used to use those kind of like hard teardroppy, and relatively heavy. I kind of started with like those the blue, I guess you would say, like what are
Tortex
those, like
blue.
1 millimeter?
Yeah, 1 millimeter.
Tortex all the way. Always Tortex, Dunlop. And then Ben and I remember Ben would kind of play those triangles, and I always thought it was kind of like just weird,
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, Ben would just kind of play whatever in a sense, and he would kind of change all the time. But I went through a phase of like greens, and then in the studio, again, Steve Evans would suggest that I would use the bigger ones. And to me, it was like a practical thing. Like if I drop my pick and I need to grab one, from like my amp or wherever I'm storing my picks, I could kind of just grab it, and 2 out of 3 times I'm probably grabbing the right side. Or like it was just easier for me to just get a good purchase on it and just go. But then I started realizing that I like those bigger picks because I could actually just get a better grip. There was more of me and more of it touching. And I just was able to get a little bit more of that, I don't know if leverage or what the physics term is here, but having more pick and kind of being able to really get so much of it in there. The triangles are, at least currently that's my steez.
Nice. And where'd you end up gauge wise? Are those still 1 millimeters, or were they a little lighter?
Yeah. I mean, whatever like the kind of green,
88s.
What is that? 0.88s. Yeah.
Yeah.
For some things I might go heavier, and what is it? The yellows would be like 70 something.
73. Yeah.
Like I can get away with those. And for like kind of more that funky Bobby Vega, like if I'm really kind of trying to get
Yeah.
a little bit more swing in there, then yeah, I mean, I'm comfortable with anything from like the 73 to a 1. But as just kind of my default, yeah, the 88s are, and it's lucky, I mean, all 88 is just kind of an auspicious number, just coincidentally. So
Double
yeah,
infinity, man. It's
yeah,
cool.
just kind of settled there.
Yeah, I like it. And it's such that gauge is so popular. All three of those gauges, maybe the most popular gauges, 73, 88, 1 millimeter, because of what you're describing. Like there's a little flex in the more flex in the 73, obviously, and then the 88 just lands right there. It still has some flex, but it's not as stiff as the 1 millimeter, not as flexy. So it's an easy place to kind of land, it seems like.
Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna make sure that we don't get even if we're wrapping it up, my low battery is coming on. I don't want to
Got it.
disappear.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Well, and the other thing I'm interested in knowing a bit about too is what you've been ingesting. Like, I mean, you haven't been out playing. So like, what are you listening to other than your Bhakti music? I mean, I know that's
Yeah.
probably top of the list, but
Well, yeah, I mean, then the other extreme would be like, something like, I'm always going to have a sweet spot for metal, and,
same.
anything from like Nile, Deathspell Omega, some of the, what is it? Orion C. Pazuzu. I'm never going to say that right, but that, they're like a Finnish kind of psychedelic heavy band. It's super cool. But just kind of like some of the Finnish psychedelic metal stuff. There's this other band, Dark Buddha Rising. This other band called Furpa. Have you ever heard Furpa?
No.
If you're into this kind of like Buddhist, if I understand it correctly, they're coming from like the Bon tradition, which is almost like throat singy, but it's dark. I almost hesitate to listen to it because I'm like, Cthulhu is stirring somewhere because of this music. It truly is like just downright scary, but also just like powerful. And speaking to some of the other things we were saying, it's like, I just think there's an authenticity to it and like an egolessness that I just find absolutely fascinating. Let's see what else. I'm always going to be into like Dead Can Dance might be my favorite band of all time.
Ooh, good choice.
And yeah.
You ever see them live by chance?
Dude, the pandemic nuked my chances. They were supposed to play in Philadelphia. So my mom got me into Dead Can Dance.
Okay.
And we had planned to go see them in Philly this past April. And the tour got canceled, of course. And it was almost like too good to be true. And any other time they'd perform, it was like one of these things where, I got into music because I'm a lover of music. And I love seeing music. I used to work at venues just to see more music, just to, fill my cup. And it's always been this kind of like give and take where like some of my favorite bands will play when I'm on tour. The other blessing is I get to play festivals with some of my favorite bands.
Sure.
Another thing, I was really looking forward to seeing Merciful Fate in Poland this past summer I was supposed to be on tour, and it's like, nope, that's not going to happen. Cause that was like that's my root. That was kind of like the first metal band I heard I think I was like 7 when I heard Don't Break the Oath, and like, just scared the piss out of me. Now again, I have a 6-year-old and I'm thinking like, I was like 7 or 8 when I heard that. Like, that was so inappropriate,
Yeah.
But like definitely had like a deep effect on me. So, so that, I'm trying to think of like non-metal stuff. The Lisa Gerard put out a record a couple years ago called like High Wreath or High Wreath. I don't something along those lines. And it's all like Han drum,
Mm.
and her voice and some other stuff. It's just like a deeply, just that kind of mystical
I've got to check that out.
thing.
I
It's super cool.
I put her on the top of otherworldly vocalists that have ever existed ever. I'm sure there's a few others out there, but whatever she's doing, like when that Yunga Lunga, like the original couple of
Oh yeah.
standout albums and stuff that they did with was it the not Spirit Within, what was it called?
Spirit Chaser.
Spirit Chaser, maybe.
Spirit Chaser and what's the other one I'm thinking of? Into the Labyrinth. Those are like the two for me that are just like,
yeah.
Like
when she kind of trails off, and because I just remember reading about her. My ex-wife was super into her as her number one vocalist, and she was like, just be quiet, real quiet, really listen to the subtleties of what's happening right here. She's got overtones going on at the same time. Like, this isn't a double track. Like, this is a live performance. You need to listen. And I'm like, oh my God.
Who's the woman I'm thinking of now? Oh gosh, I can't think of her name. She female. She is Armenian, I want to say. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I can't think of her name. She's like another one of my absolute favorites, and I'm just like blanking right now. Scary. She used to do these performances where she would like, I think I think the origin of this is like her brother died of HIV, and she kind of like at least partially took it out on the church. And she used to do these performances like in cathedrals, like topless, covered in blood, and she would just like scream and do these like kind of like plays. Like she had this whole like script, and like every time she would perform it, it would just get longer, and it was like 8 hour like just catharsis. I cannot believe I can't think of her name right now, and I don't want to like distract. It'll probably come to me when I'm not thinking of it. I'll definitely text you later because
send me a link.
I'll do the research. What other things? And then I will always go back to like the things I used to always love. There's always going to be like I really like oh my God, I must be getting tired or hungry right now because my brain's not working. He's a bass player who played with Chick Corea. Mark
Stanley
Juliana
Clark?
played. No, younger guy. Not younger, but like more our generation. Mark Juliana, who played on the David Bowie record, played on this. It's called Gently Disturbed. Avishai Cohen.
Oh, don't know.
Dude, Avishai Cohen, Gently Disturbed. That record is fantastic. What else? And then I'll always dip into like weird, like Jay Dilla Donuts. Like I listen to that record, any time of day.
All about Dilla.
K Tronada. Do you know that guy? K Tronada?
Amazing. What a
that 99.9% record is fantastic. Thundercat, fantastic.
Amen.
Man, I don't know. I mean, we could just go off. This is like, but I've also been like going back into like weird stuff. I don't. It's very saturated right now, and I admit, like I listen to a lot of stuff, but I rarely get like more than like 3 or 4 tracks into like any metal record. I'm just like, cool. But then like it doesn't always stick with me.
Same.
But like I could always go back and listen to like Living Color Time's Up, just over and over and over again, or like some of the old, like Into Another. Were you ever into Another?
I don't know that band.
It's like a weirder kind of like post-hardcore band. But the bass player played with a pick, really cool stuff. They have a record called Ignaris that was really cool, but even anything before that was pretty rad. Yeah, I don't know.
You were when the pandemic hit, you were on tour with Devin, weren't you?
What? Not on tour, but just kind of basically I went and hung out with Devin when he played in Philly. And even that night, it was like the beginning of should I go out? Is this
Oh,
getting weird? So I worked at a foundry. I was like helping to weld like bronze statues together and doing like large scale sand casting for like large art commissions.
cool.
And working there though, we all use those N95 masks like constantly. And all
Mm-hmm.
of a sudden N95 masks and like rubber gloves, because you couldn't necessarily like touch the metal after it was high polished. It was like all this stuff like was harder and harder to get. And then we couldn't get it. And then we could get it, but it was really expensive. And I was like, what's going on here? So I felt like I had kind of a, my ear to the ground a little bit before a lot of people, just realizing like, no, this is actually serious. And, it might not seem serious to you, but in this small way, like I have to now like adjust my respirator habits because I can't get these things.
Mm.
But anyway, I remember like Devin and I had plans to just go like have dinner and just kind of discuss, the summer plans. And yeah, I remember like kind of within like a week, I was going to go see Wes Hawk play with, uh, yeah, again, my, murder,
Oh, thy
Style
art
is
is
murder.
murder. Yeah.
Thank you. I was supposed to go see them play, and they were like sitting at the venue, and then their show got canceled that night
Uh,
because of the pandemic. So it was like all that was happening, like it all was like right butting up against. Um, so yeah, I wasn't quite on tour yet, but like that was probably like obviously March, and we were supposed to start rehearsals in like May,
got it.
and obviously that's didn't happen, and I'm
Mm.
not sure it's gonna happen. And or yeah, I don't know. I'm not getting no expectations there. And because the other thing too is like I think then everybody was just kind of like, we'll just put everything on pause.
Right.
But like nothing's really on pause.
Yeah.
Everything is still moving, and and getting satisfied another way. We
Right.
we got to do that kind of video stream thing, which was like like a cool opportunity, and in some ways not it's not a replacement necessarily, and it's not really a placeholder either. I just kind of feel like Devin's probably already on to some other, or I know he's just on to some other shit by now.
Oh my God, the
And
two albums he's about to finish right now.
yeah, it's
I got to
exciting
tell you.
stuff. Yeah.
Has he shared any of that with you?
No. I don't know anything of it.
Yeah, I won't say what it is, but it's a collaborative project. I'm thankful I was tapped to be a little bit a part of it too.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see where it goes, but like
Yeah.
he's just, yeah, he's definitely on. He's always on to something else, man. By the time
That dude he's got a Midas touch.
for
You know,
sure,
he's really just somebody you just kind of try to grab his coattails or try to just grab his feet and hope that you can, catch his draft.
Yeah,
Um,
I've learned a lot from being just around Devin, and he's one of my favorite people in the music industry because it's such a high level of intellect and heart married at the same time. Like I feel like
right.
he's very highly intellectual at the same time. He's like, let me reduce this real quick for you down to the bare essence,
Right.
the bare bones, and let's talk about something real. And I'm like,
Right. But
yeah,
the thing, and yes, I fully agree. The other component that I think he has, that I think is often either misunderstood or undervalued, is his sense of humor and his silliness and his like just ability to be so serious or just delivers something with such authenticity and such like genuine value, and it's genuinely good, but he doesn't take himself too seriously.
mm-mm.
And there's always this sense of humor, and there's always this kind of like disarming quality to him and his music and his performances that like I really respect and applaud in a major way, because coming from Dillinger, where it was just like you know uh, we smell blood in the water, we're just out to fuck everything up and destroy everything and everything, and we were silly too, but like it was harder to communicate that. It seemed like it clashed.
Mm.
You know, our offstage personalities and our onstage personalities, to me, made perfect sense. But I think from an audience point of view, there was a lot to reconcile there. And I think he does a really good job of like creating a context for his art,
Yeah.
and just being able to really be himself, you know, in a way that maybe, you know, and I am kind of looking more in the rear view with Strapping Young Lad or something. But when I look back and see like performances of Strapping Young Lad versus like performances of him now, I'm just like, I think he's always been who he is now, and maybe just couldn't have always. It wasn't as comfortable to be, you know, his true self. I'm not sure if he would say the same.
I think it's a classic case of how you
I
hold
mean,
it,
he's
right?
true then too, but
Yeah.
like, I think he's just evolved into a bigger sense of himself.
He holds himself in a better way now.
Yeah.
I think absolutely. And it's funny because I wouldn't saw him, as strapping a few times before I ever had a relationship with him. And I mean, I liked his earlier stuff and I wanted to like him, but the strapping stuff, like, I wasn't sure how much of his character on stage was actually a thing, and I was
Right.
like, is this guy, I couldn't tell. And so I was like, yeah, to be continued. I don't really know about, if
Sure.
this is really the thing or not. If he can't be as cool as everybody thinks he is, because
Right.
he kind of seems like a jerk. I'm not sure, wasn't sure. I couldn't put my finger.
Yeah.
And then from our very first time we ever hung out, and he was sober and he was finishing the DTP stuff. He was doing deconstruction and Ghost as he and I were kind of warming up, and I just he was so disarming is the right word.
Yeah.
Disarming is the word that it works for my experience with him, and just super thankful. Wow.
Yeah. No.
Fantastic vocalist.
Oh man. Yeah. When you hear Kingdom, I mean, that was really the like, wow, this guy's got crazy pipes,
Great. What I love is that we did. I flew him down for EMG TV years ago before the Fishman thing happened, and we did these videos that are still like, they just have millions upon millions upon millions of hits now because they're incredible. And it's just him in the EMG TV, thing by himself playing the tracks. But then those sessions have spurred on, like, I don't know how countless vocal teacher reaction videos where somebody's like, hey, watch this Kingdom video with Devin on EMG TV, and then react to it. And those videos have 500,000 views, each.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to dissect and understand, like, who is this? This isn't how, this is defying all the laws of gravity, and
right.
Very
true.
Impressive.
Yeah, for sure.
What's in the near field? Do you have any music projects?
I mean, the Azusa, which is my band with, it's two members from Extol, the kind of metal band from Norway.
I know them.
And again, another thing that kind of just got buried with the pandemic. I think we released a record like mid-April of last year. It was just like, this is going to get just overlooked. No chance of supporting this at all. So that's still, bubbling. Those guys are really prolific. They get to meet at least once a week. Norway is doing much better with their pandemic response. So, I mean, I'm getting demos for new Azusa material. John Frum, which is my other kind of more psychedelic death metal project.
It's very cool.
We're, also kind of at least more than halfway through a draft of an album, and some typical band stuff, not only pandemic but just geography, different responsibilities that people have, some potential lineup shifting, but always for the better. I would love to talk more about that in in a couple months, I guess. But
Sure.
I think, you know, there's a lot of stuff that's happening there. It's just a matter of, okay, when can we actually like get together safely and comfortably, and everybody's, you know, okay with that, and actually start like grinding this out in the, you know, in the room, so to speak. So it's a bit frustrating because I just kind of feel like I'm like, nah, and nothing's coming out, and there's a lot in there. So yeah, I just think that everything right now is, at least for me, it seems like there's a lot going on, but because of circumstances, I'm just kind of like, I'm pulling my arrow back, and I'm just spending a lot more time aiming. I'm measuring twice and cutting once. I'm trying to also just like, you know, through my you know, my intersections with Devin, I, you know, also realized a lot about my playing that needs to be polished and, you know, if not completely deconstructed and rebuilt. Because, you know, and I think, you know, I'm grateful for somebody like that getting to mirror me back at myself. And because, you know, he's a caliber I'm not used to rolling with. And yeah, so that was, you know, exciting and humbling and all of the above. So yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to stay flexible, you know, and just kind of enjoy music for music's sake again. You know, it's been humbling just seeing and even trying to anticipate what music and music performance is going to look like. You know, I see like, you know, people would post like videos of like, oh, you know, 3 years ago today I was at the Dillinger last show, you know, like around December, I started seeing a lot of those like Instagram tags, and just watching the crowd and just being like, you know, you kind of have that 2020 mentality of just like, where's everybody's mask? You know, and I'm watching, you know what I mean? That kind of weird PTSD. And I'm just looking at it, I'm just like, I don't know if it'll ever be like that again. Just people just, it was like a snake pit, you know, of just sweat and everybody's right up on it. And it's
I've been in that.
I don't know. I don't know if it's ever going to be like that again. And I'm just kind of super grateful for having had that great experience and like was able to provide that kind of catharsis for people. But this weird feeling of doubt of like, is it ever going to come back? Or, you know, it was tough enough. I kind of, you know, I've done some things that I wish I could say more about, but like touring with some bands anonymously and, you know, and kind of participating in things anonymously, and the struggle to do that because, you know, of course I would like to trade on my name, but there's also a part of my ego that's like, but I like the experiment of not, you know, of kind of being able to do this and really kind of have it feel pure. But then there's always that thing that we came back to, which is like the financial part of it, where it's like, I don't do it for money, but at the same time, you know, I need some kind of compensation, or at the very least, I need to be able to turn to my wife and say, this is why I'm leaving you with the kid for 3 weeks, you know, where, you know, I need some kind of, you know, collateral or whatever currency here. And thinking again about like the way it's going to work, you know, and maybe I'm thinking too business oriented, but like when I think about the insurance, or when I think about the risks that venues are going to take, or how much it's going to cost because people aren't going to show up, you know, and how long it's going to take. And I don't mean to be like, you know, a wet blanket here, but I've been having a lot of really down to earth conversations with musicians about like, what do we do? You know, how do we pivot here? You know, for me, it seemed like a really natural thing to just be like, I don't know if I don't have any like weird fantasy about getting rich off yoga teacher training, but like, I just kind of want to do something, you know, I want to feel like I'm moving my, cause really at the root of it, like I just chose to cut through the bullshit. I'm trying to cut through Maya, and I just happen to have a base. That was what I was doing it with up until this point. And if I can't get out there and do that, then I still need to find a way to cut through Maya, you know, that illusion, and get to my true self. You know, the base was just a means for me to try to understand myself and to realize, how I can be, basically anything I put into this is going to give it. It's really one of the few things where like, literally, if I don't put anything into it, then I don't get anything out of it. And if I put a lot into it, it gives me a lot back, whether it's self-esteem or fame or success, whatever it might be. And just kind of trying to, after having tasted some success and having certain standards with what I want out of music and touring and what I feel like I can get away with. And it's a different climb, and it's a different future. And and it definitely helps me readjust my priorities. I've enjoyed being home with my daughter. It's like, I actually am so thankful that I didn't have to go on tour. I feel like I was addicted to touring, and, Dillinger was a bit of a detox, but like this pandemic, that's a major detox.
Totally.
And not that I don't like it, but like, it's almost like, if you take a break from weed and then you smoke, you're like, oh, right, this is what feeling high is like again.
Hell yeah.
And I feel like I'm having that kind of feeling with music right now. But I know that if I just were to say smoke every day, multiple times a day, if I was on tour 8-9 months a year, I wouldn't get high anymore. And I realize that that's, and I know that that's also cyclical. I'm probably going to get back into music in a major and just be frothing to go on tour in that way. But right now I'm really just kind of like, yeah, I don't know. I'm in love with playing and recording, and I really want to like get better at producing myself at home and like, that kind of stuff. But touring just seems like, I don't know. Cause the other thing is like, I always loved to travel, really touring was like an excuse for me to travel and see the world. And I've seen so much of it. And so thankful that I had 18 years of, bold adventure.
That's a long run, man.
It's a long run. Yeah. I mean, I'm forever grateful. And I just see a lot of other people who I know were like in the middle of a tour, or like we're in Europe having their shows canceled as they're going. I'm like, dude, you guys deserve to be as big as me. And you're like just getting nuked out there. And I'm sorry. And I feel for you. And, it just makes me feel like I'm not trying to count the coin of what I'm missing, or like, oh, I didn't get to go on tour. I wish I was out with Devin right now. It's like, no, man, I'm, sometimes you can't always get what you want, but you might just get what you need.
Do you think that you'll ever be drawn towards doing kind of like a more bhakti solo album, collaborative, something that's more reminiscent of the music that you've been getting into?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to perform in that kind of service way. I would love to have somebody, I would daydream about somebody kind of initiating me as a student and teaching me this stuff through music. Right now, these things feel very separate. It's like my yoga practice and my music. And, maybe I could buy myself a harmonium and kind of learn to play some kirtan or something like, and I would love to do something like that. Like somebody like, I'm not sure if you're familiar with like Janavi Harrison. Kirtan singer. She actually just did an EP with Willow Smith of all people. Okay. Yeah. But like some of her stuff, like I've heard some stuff, or like Krishna Das, Krishna Das.
Yeah.
Like he has like Mark Egan, old Mark Egan bass player. I should say old, but like, long, tall tree in the bass world, I guess.
Sure.
Whose music always kind of inspired me when I heard it. Like, this guy rips. And I remember seeing his like, his little columns in the back of Bass Player magazine about like just, melodic and harmonic function. And I'm like, this guy gets it. And I'm just trying to like, this guy's forgotten more than I'll ever know. And I'm just trying to lick a little bit of this. But I was listening to I'm pretty sure it was Krishna Das, and just being like, man, the bass is so deep and like rich and not shredding at all. But just like, I can tell that this person has put a lot of time and energy into this, and they're playing lines that anybody could play, but the tone is just, I was like, man, I would really love to get into that. Yeah. So, I mean, of course I would, really enjoy that kind of, that different type of performance or that different type of offering. But I've yet to kind of find that guru. or
Well,
that hasn't come to me yet.
my thought is also maybe that it's just a minimalist project that is influenced by the tenets of your studies, not necessarily
Sure.
squarely in the genre, right? Like, I don't
I've
know.
always struggled to, and this gets back into like just producing myself in any way. Like I've always, I have a couple, what I would consider more or less like finished tracks that I've created in Ableton or something. And I think they're authentic and I think they're good, but they're kind of like scatterbrained. I don't think they would ever fit onto an album together. They don't seem cohesive. And yeah, I've always kind of struggled with like the songwriter thing. I look, are you familiar with bent knee?
It sounds familiar. I don't know
Bent
firsthand.
knee, got to get on that tip.
Yeah.
But the guitar player, his name is Ben Levin, and he's got some solo material, and he's kind of in that like Evan Marion, Adam Nitti. I think that's who I'm thinking of. Adam Nitti might be the wrong name, but just like it seems like the guy just like sweats music. You put a microphone in front of him and he's just making songs, okay, well, that's a loop. And next thing you know, the guy's he's just spilling it out, in a way that I'm just like, I am so in my head. I'm so like, yeah, I don't know. I need to kind of, and maybe all this other stuff I'm doing is helping. And I guess it's kind of a fantasy more than a bucket list. But yeah, I mean, I would love to do it. And I think it's my own, probably my own lack of confidence or self-esteem that has prevented me thus far. So not unlike a lot of things, it's probably just a matter of like jump and a net will appear. And I don't need to kind of be up in my own head so much about it.
I've noticed too, just the whole, if you're interested in exploring something, that if you just kind of put it on your whiteboard and come back to it at regular intervals, that without too much expectation. I think that for me has been the biggest thing, because if I come in here that I expect something, I get heady about it. And even right now I'm in the middle of writing lyrics for these couple different songs, and I'm like, and I get too heady about I start, once I've gotten halfway through, I'm like, how do I finish this? How do I, like, I'm not, where does this go from, and I go, instead of just finding a flow and tapping in and playing with it and being goofy and then erasing stuff that you don't like.
Right.
I get all weird about it. Then.
I mean, but seeing even like your, like the hip hop project that you did, and just seeing stuff, I mean, truly like, and I probably don't vocalize it as much, but like just seeing stuff like that chips away at my own, insecurities, cause I'm just like, okay, what the, I'm just going to freaking do this. It's like, I think, in some ways having achieved some level of success and notoriety, gets in my way, because I kind of feel like, oh, okay, I have this fan base and they expect a certain thing. And I know that my fan base, and luckily I think Dillinger fans are really open-minded.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, and and of course I've been able to release music confidently, and I look at my other bandmates, especially Greg is just plowing stuff out, and it's great because he kind of has zero fucks about what the audience expects. And he's kind of educating his audience too. But I feel like I need to make sure that it's up to a standard. It doesn't necessarily have to fit into a style or anything, but I feel like I do have a standard. And I also feel like you go fast alone, but you get further together.
Amen.
I've always been a band dude. I play bass. If I wanted to be a singer-songwriter, if I wanted to write music, I probably would have either spent more time on my laptop or picked up guitar. But I really enjoy that, like, blocking for touchdowns. I want to be a lineman, not the quarterback. And I really feel like, if I'm being honest, that's my dharma. So I would love to do collaborative things, or maybe, me and one other person that doesn't necessarily have like a band lineup, or like.
But you have a mirror, you have a reflection point, and they can go, you know what, Liam, that's great, but this other part, cut it out, bro. Yeah,
cut
it's
that.
horrible.
I enjoy that, because to me that kind of gets back into that like growth Like I need to feel like I'm pushing against something existential in a way.
Same.
And I don't know if, I mean, my wife will tell you, like, I'm not my best mirror in a lot of ways. And I need that loving, caring, but critical, transparent thing.
I hear you, man. The reason why, since my band, you know, stopped in 2008, I've been like, okay, I look around, I see all these people that are able to sit in a room and make music in the box, and I was like, I'll learn how to do that. It's been 10 plus years and I've been trying to learn how to do that. And it's like, I need a band. I want to like come up with 5 riffs, and then you guys help, let's organize them and kick the shitty ones out and put it together. And everybody goes, oh, like I'm hearing this, and let's create something that is greater than the sum of its parts. Like that has been my codependency in creating music. And then, but I will say that, 10 years of just sitting around doing demos and watching other people, and then occasionally being asked to do certain things where it was like, hey, can you just do this one thing for me? And I'd be like, I think I can. I'll find out we'll find out.
We'll find out. Yeah.
Yeah. Here you go. And then I'm like, I guess I could do that. I didn't know I could do that. And this hip hop thing has really been like, I played with hip hop 10 years, 20 years ago even, but it was always just for myself, and it was inside jokes with my buddy. It was horrible. I mean, it was the level was low, the bar was low because we're just trying to impress our friends. And this one is still, I mean, I still have my own like weirdness around it, but at the end of the day, I'm at the place in my life where my not giving a fuck is greater than my need to be liked, my need to be like accepted into a certain thing. And when I look around at my peer group, I've been working with all these shredders for the last 15 years on every level, and I'm like, the one thing that I don't see many of those guys doing, hip hop. I love it. I'm going to do something left field.
It was great. I really, when I saw that and realized like how authentic, and that there was like a backstory to it. You're like, I used to do this. This isn't just like, this is me actually continuing something. I was just like, man, that rules. I really, I can relate. And,
thanks.
I'm excited. It's because I don't know, there's just so much to be learned through that kind of thing. And I agree with something else you were saying, just like, with John Frum the first record we wrote, it was probably, at least for me, Dillinger had some stuff, but I never really felt like I was the main fountainhead of that project.
Mm-hmm.
And with John Frum, it was like, Matt, the guitar player, Eli and I would just like get together in my basement for like, a couple years. And sometimes it was just like every Monday from like 11 to 1 in the afternoon, we all kind of had time, but we would get in the basement and we would just start and just slowly grind it out. But it always felt like there were 4 people in the room. There was always this muse. There was always this other thing that like, again, just kind of lifted us all beyond where we were each coming from, and we rarely would come in there with something, and it was almost like a bit unspoken that like, we'd only really like turn to something you had in your pocket if we really hit a roadblock. But we were really tapping into that, like that morphogenic field that I was talking about. And it really was like, this is fucking cool. And I trust it now. And I don't need to like, feel like it's coming from me, and I think that's another kind of ego play, is just realizing like, not only am I not the, not only should I not enjoy the fruits of my labor so much, but like, I shouldn't really think that I'm the one coming up with this, or like I worked so hard for this, I'm so talented. It's like, I've seen dudes 10 times more talented than me have 1/10 of the success, and it makes no sense. And I don't want to wonder why. I just know it's true. I don't know.
Yeah,
I could say a lot about this kind of stuff, but
no, there's that a whole trope of like, there's a lot of folks out there less qualified than you doing a lot more, right? So
That too. Yeah.
they just believe that they can, so they start down the road and they do it. And so there's some element of like kind of confidence / ignorance around the setting
or
out,
just
you know?
or just that they've just got a certain dharma and karma that it just goes
Right.
past anything that I can perceive. And I just need to worry about being like the best Liam I can be. And, and just trying to tap into something unique, and because, one example I would think of is like, you ask a kid, who, maybe my daughter walks into the room and she's got a bowl of food and you're like, well, where'd you get that? She's like, well, I just got it out of the fridge, and then I might be like, well, no, you didn't. I went to the supermarket and I put that food in the fridge, and then some farmer or somebody at the supermarket's like, well, actually, I grew that food and I delivered it to the supermarket. And then that farmer might be like, I planted the seeds and I'd watered it, but you know what? I didn't make it rain, and so it just kind of keeps going back and back and back. And I think that for artists, it's really easy to get tripped up in that. But when you don't get tripped up in it, it's really easy to then, feel like I never feel like I have writer's block. Like the reason why I don't have like a solo album or like whatever isn't because like I don't have ideas. I don't even worry that I know they'll come if I just sit down. But it's just a matter of just being like, is that really where I want to direct my energy? Or, for me personally, I feel like being a parent, I used to feel like the arrow. Now I feel like the bow. If I would rather teach my daughter music than sit upstairs and work on my 3-finger taps.
That's
so
amazing.
I have to be a little bit more refined with where I point myself because I don't have a lot of time, it seems. So maybe that kind of stuff would come up later. But right now I'm just really enjoying like the collaborative stuff because not unlike traveling, it's also like this sounds so corny, but it's like, it's all about the friendships we made along the way, or else we wouldn't be talking either.
Oh my God. That's what this is. That's exactly what this is.
So being in a band and just kind of tapping into, not only do I get to know these guys, like Azusa, it's like, I was a fan of Extol, and then I get to meet them and there's that like awkwardness of like, what are they going to think of me? And what is their expectation of me? And then realizing that they do have an expectation of me that I'm not going to meet. But then, and also realizing my expectation of them is different, but then seeing like, but as I become more authentic and show myself, then all of a sudden they're like, oh, but this is so much better, and like my friendship with you and my expectations of you and what I thought you would be able to do and what I thought you would be able to, like I thought maybe you could hack on some fretless stuff a little bit better, but you know what? But I never thought you could do that. And super cool. And now like these people, it's like, I don't even, now we just talk on the phone and it's like kind of like what we're doing. Oh, we should talk about some music. It's like I just like talking to them and like, how's everything? Blah blah blah. Talking about life. Oh yeah, okay, yeah, I did hear that demo. Yeah, I'll respond to that email later. Okay, yeah, talk to you. It's like such a footnote,
Oh,
and I just
great.
I enjoy that part more than almost any of it.
That's awesome, Liam. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. And friendship is the thing, man. Matter of fact, wow, we're like rounded 2 hours now. But
yeah,
I was talking to Paul Masvidal last night from Cynic, and
yep.
man, he's had a rough year with losing his bandmates, and
All the Cynic fans have.
oh my God. But we were on the phone for 2.5 hours or something like that last night. And he's like, what are you doing tomorrow? I go, oh, I'm getting up early. I'm talking to Liam. He's like, oh, tell Liam I said hi. Cool. I really like that guy. And I'm like, yeah, he's into yoga. He's going through a yoga teacher training. He's like, oh, really? Oh, and he got all jazzed about just thinking about you. And I thought,
we've only met briefly. It warms my heart to know, it's like, it's not who you know, it's who knows you.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I know who Obama is. That dude doesn't know who I am. to think that Paul even remembers me is like such a like, it warms my heart. And Sean's passing. Also, we weren't super close, but for the time where I did meet him and get to hang out, like I got to take lessons with him for like a week at a guitar institute when I was like 15.
Wow.
So I got to like really, dive deep for like 1 week at a time where like I really needed that, at an age where like having a mentor and having him just give me that respect, and just talk to me as a human, was just really powerful. But yeah, I mean, Cynic, especially talking about all this yoga stuff, like I wouldn't, when I first heard Maya or Ahankara or all this stuff, it's Paul, I'm assuming, and just, I offer my humble obeisances to that guy because that band really, really, in so many ways set me off on such a cool path.
Yeah, I heard
So
that band. I was like,
send my respects back to him because, yeah,
100%. Yeah, I remember hearing that band and going, "Oh, so this is possible." I had no inkling of. I mean, this is a different. It's almost like they're using different colors that I didn't know existed, and here you are, and you're.
Yeah. I mean, we're all using Crayola, and he's painting in ultraviolet. It was like
full spectrum, right? And I'm like, wow. And we talked about, finishing the record without the Seans, and like, how it's necessary, but it's different, and there's this huge grieving process, and like, and just the human element around it really is just incredible. And for me, being a fan, I think I found focus around like when I was probably close to being 19 or 20 or something like that.
Okay.
Because a friend that ran a metal section at Camelot Music here was like always looking out for me, and he's like, "Hey, this thing came in. It looks like it's kind of your thing." And I'm like, "All right." And but being a big fan, then coming back and finally getting to see both the Seans together on the Traced in the Air tour, and
I never saw him either.
Finally it coming to like a real life thing, and I mean I cried watching them play because I was just like, Sean Malone is amazing, but Sean Reinhart, like, absolute mind blowing, like to the level of like what you would imagine John Bonham like being, in certain ways to Led Zeppelin, and now just kind of have this ghostly kind of, wow, man, I got to experience those guys. And
I never saw them live. That was another band where like we never played a fest, and every time they were here, I was there. And but I remember hearing, or turning on was Traced in Air and the Space for This coming on, and just like same thing, like I just teared up. And I was just like, this is so beautiful. I can't believe it took 14 years for this to kind of like manifest itself. And it's so good. I was so afraid that this was going to suck.
Same.
Because so many things do. Mm-hmm. Most things are disappointing, but just hearing that and just being like, and just feeling that like bliss. And I mean, I just think that they touch on something. I think back to, I kind of have a bit of regret because the last time I spoke with Sean Malone, he had sent me the Cynic transcriptions, like the focus-based transcriptions, just kind of like wrote me like, "Hey, what's your address?" And like, "I want to send you something." And I just received that, which is like, whoa, just so humbled. I mean, he is probably my favorite bass player.
Really? Oh, wow.
And maybe not. I don't know. It's hard to have a favorite, but like he really, really touched my playing. And again, because I got to meet him, it's like there's that personal association of just like, not only do I like your playing, but like you're literally as a human being, maybe my favorite bass player because you're just so nice and so wise. And so like you just turned me on to so many books and CDs and beyond grateful. But we had meant to get on the phone like, "Hey, like I'd love to catch up with you." And through miscommunication, probably my own fault, and I think it was something like with my daughter too, where it was like, like we had meant to talk at this time, and like she won't nap, and I like can't grab the phone, and just, okay, well we'll catch up this time. And then I think his mother got sick, and maybe, there was some other stuff, or maybe he was moving, and then we just never caught up. And it was like, and then I see the news, I was just like, this is like carpe diem.
I have a similar situation. I mean, we connected when I was at Dunlop for a while. I sent him strings, and some pedals, and dude, I was so overjoyed. I was like, I know Paul, but like, I really wanted to know Malone and Reinhardt and help them in any way possible. Just energetically, it was like, it felt a part of my dharma. I'm like, whatever you guys want, dude, you guys come along. You guys get first pick. And so I sent a bunch of cool stuff out to Sean. We had a few phone calls, emails. And then we didn't really talk for a while. And then I was in LA and here working for Kiesel this last year. Well, technically the year before, I guess now it's weird.
Yeah.
But and it was, the conversation came up. And it's like, man, I want to make you a bass and see if you'd want to work with me. I'd love to support you in that way. Is it possible that I could make you something that you would, want to rep, And he's like, I'm open to it. And that was, it didn't get past that because there was he was already towards in an interesting place. It didn't manifest. It ended up kind of going through Paul a bit and then fell off, and then he disappeared for a while, and we didn't know where he was at. He didn't want anybody to know. And then, that's a whole nother story, but I'll keep it private for, those that are involved.
For sure.
But, yeah, man. Thanks for talking to me, Liam. Man, like I'm all lit up around all these subjects now, and I want to like go listen to Cynic more and go back and write down all your suggestions and listen to these bands. And
we'll take this offline, and I don't know how you post these, but we can always Diamanda Galas. That is the woman who I was saying, and she would be able to do the her vocal cords could vibrate at two different speeds. That was where I was thinking about.
The Lisa Gerard.
We were talking about Lisa Gerard comparison. Yeah. Yes. Diamanda Galas. But anyway, I was going to say, I'm not sure how you post these or if you do like that, we could have like some links attached, but
of course,
I will for sure share some links with you. This is good timing. My earbuds just did that.
Oh yeah. They're like, you got
and luckily, I guess it's, well, at least for us, it's lucky. My daughter is in school and I have to go pick her up.
Oh,
so
perfect timing.
Mr. Mom, here we
Everything
go.
is as it should be.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you for taking the time and always for helping me. You've been a very gracious soul in my career and on my path. And it's always nice to connect with people and realize that things are still moving in a nice Inga Pingula parallel direction. Ida Pingula parallel direction is what I was trying to say.
Hey man, I like your words, even if they're weird. It's fine.
The Ida and the Pingula, I believe, are the two paths up your spine. Oh. When like the doctor, there's the Sushumna, and then the Ida and the Pingala are like the two snakes that wrap around the that doctor with the wings.
It's
I think that's kind of the origin of that.
Connected to the nadis. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, we just learned something else right there.
Yeah. Anyway.
The educational
Thank
program.
you.
Thank you. Yeah. Have a great day.
Thank you. We'll talk again soon. Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds great, man. I love you, brother. Take care.
Namaste.
Namaste. Hariom. Bye.
Yeah. Hariom Tat Sat.